Today we're speaking with Nitesh Pant, co-founder of Devdash Labs, who helps SMB founders overcome operational bottlenecks with custom AI solutions. Nitesh, welcome to Just Curious.
Happy to be here, Stu.
Tell me a little bit about yourself. Who is Nitesh? What led you to start focusing on helping SMBs and startups use AI to solve problems?
I'm Nitesh. I'm co-founder of Devdash Labs. We're an AI research and development company. Our story starts around mid 2024. I found myself building opportunities, and this gave me time to dive deep into what was happening in AI, especially around the emerging agentic space that most people weren't talking about back then. And I started building and releasing a few products. And what I saw was a massive gap on what I was doing and what LinkedIn was doing, or what LinkedIn experts were doing, right? So then till now, it's full of people who probably haven't written a single line of code, but are selling promises, impossible promises to business owners who want real solutions. I think that's crap. So I said, I have had enough of that, and I said I'm going to make an impact here. So we started focusing almost exclusively on SMBs and startups, and we started giving them, research-backed custom AI solutions with measurable ROI instead of just empty promises. Then it came down to seeing a problem and getting fed up with the status quo and deciding to do something about it.
Awesome. And we're going to walk through an example of one of your engagements in a few minutes. Maybe we could start with bottlenecks and problems. How can founders and leaders effectively identify which bottlenecks or problems are best suited to AI automation?
That's a great question. So a couple of themes, I'd say, that stand out. First would be tasks that are taking 10, 15, or even 20 hours per week for a founder. And if those tasks are repeated and they have a certain process around it, right? So long tasks, very repeatable and have a certain process around it. Those are the first, what we call easy wins of AI implementation. That's part one. And I guess the second part is what we call scaling unique value. So a lot of our clients are professional services companies that have been domain experts for the past 5-10 years. They have built processes, they have built IP, knowledge bases around it. And when you're at that point, you can't just talk to ChatGPT and expect it to understand the world in your viewpoint. You have to build out agents that can ingest your client's data and process it and work with it from your viewpoint. So I guess those are two major themes, right? Repeated process and stuff where your IP can be the moat.
Interesting. Is there a process to identify the first bottleneck? Do you interview everyone on the team? Do you look at your calendar? Do you just make a note of where you're spending your time? And then, when it feels like you're spending a lot of time doing a replicable process, that's it. How do you usually go about identifying those opportunities?
So we personally, we run workshops, AI discovery workshops that do it for you, but there's different ways to do it, right? So first is, as you said, really understanding where is it that you're as a founder, you're facing these bottlenecks. Where is it that you're doing replicable processes? Where is it that, you could use automation? I like to think of it as an intern test. If you can, teach an intern about 2-3 hours of work and hopefully over the course of a week, they get better at it. That's probably something you could spin an AI agent to do, a custom AI agent to do for you. So that's one way to look about it. Other way is to, always start with the problem, right? Instead of the, what am I doing? It's what are the problems that I'm solving? And can I now solve these problems using AI?
Can we also expand on the second opportunity you suggested, which is to leverage your IP in new and different ways using agents? What does that look like in practice? And maybe give us, I know we're going to walk through a case study, but maybe give us a short kind of example, like, and we can blind it, of like what that would look like for a professional services firm.
So, if and by professional services, it's often consulting companies, boutique
Yeah.
companies, and boutique consulting companies. They have frameworks that they've built out. They have processes, workflows, models, right? And one thing that's constant is that to build on these models, you need client data. That's one part of the equation.
Yeah.
You need your IP, right? And you need a brain to process that. So your IP comes down from past projects you've worked on, some institutional knowledge you've developed while doing this project, and your talent pipeline that's there, like your actual consultants. Client data is client data. For AI, it has to be a little bit more structured. You can't just feed it in unstructured data. But the way you go about doing this would be building or training, as we call it, training agents that can think like a consultant, like your consultant would, given what your firm knows, right? So, training from your, past cases, and I'm nice, of course, training from if you have any specific frameworks you like to use, right? Stuff like that. And sort of using now, if you have a custom solution, you have the data, which is the context here, right? You already have the context with the agent and you can converse with it and ask it to do work for you.
Got it. So these are internal tools
Yes.
that are allowing the consultants to do more than they could do before because they're leveraging all the experiences and knowledge of the organization over however many years it's been around.
Exactly. Yes. So what we've found is that the limiting factor is how much hours can someone work for a client project, right? So suppose like there's X $1,000 per client project, and there's only so much hour you can put into it. So you're now limited by your revenue is somewhat limited by the maximum number of hours in a year you can work, right? But now with AI, what you can do is the client project size might not decrease, but the hours it takes you to do a work decreases because your productivity has increased. So now you can actually increase your revenue because you can get more work done in the same time frame.
Yeah. Yeah. That's always like when people talk about efficiency and doing the same amount with less, I guess, is sort of like where people's heads immediately go. But if you are a business that has opportunity in front of you, you should be able to do more with the same.
Percent. Why not?
Yeah. There's a lot going on in AI, and I imagine it can be overwhelming for founders and leaders. What sort of practical advice do you give them when they come to you and say they're just overwhelmed with all the different options?
My first practical advice is experiment yourself. Don't trust the hype, right? So if you haven't already, you should at this point use ChatGPT, use Claude, use Gemini, use your favorite chatbot. Try to come up with workflows. So these could be small custom GPTs that help you get work done faster. So that's one way to experiment. Second would be not to fall for the hype that you see around LinkedIn. So that you might see a lot of like very specialized custom workflows, custom agents built. There's a huge chance that is so custom that it probably won't work for your use case.
Right.
Start from the problem, not the solution. That's our motto. That's what we believe in.
Gotcha. When you're building a custom solution for one of your clients, how do you ensure that it handles real world complexities and the edge cases that tend to emerge?
That's a great question. The solution to that is a lot of testing and a lot of evaluations, right? So there is the part where you build it well. So good prompt engineering, good RAG pipelines, good agent building, good methods, good infrastructure. That's good. But the real moat, as we've seen it, comes down to how much you have evaluated LLM outputs and given those evals, how you're fine tuning your process or you're fine tuning your agents. So the quick answer to that is rigorous testing.
Yeah. Yeah. And maybe you could share a little bit more about your process for both like rapidly deploying, but also iteratively improving the custom solutions that you're building for SMBs. What does that process look like? You mentioned a discovery workshop as maybe one of the first steps. Walk us through what that process looks like.
Yeah, so we run AI discovery workshops where there's three different phases to it. First is the education part. The second is the identification part, and then there's the implementation strategy part. So we start with a quick one AI and a new strategic way of thinking about AI implementation. We've developed some frameworks around it, and those are to identify quick wins, strategic transformations, or efficiency gains, depending on what the use case is. And then after we know we've done a quick one-on-one, we go and do a couple of items. So this is like problem solving, but very specific for AIs. So it could be as simple as like listing out all your problems, all the pain points you have, or doing a day in day in the life of a CEO, or
Right.
in the life of a CEO type exercise, and then using what we have learned and thinking, okay, what are good opportunities that could be where AI could be a good fit, right? Taking two or three of those and then doing an exercise where you're really drilling down on the problem, because oftentimes the problem that you get in the first point, the pain point, right? It's a symptom of the real underlying problem, but not
Right.
the
Yeah.
problem itself. And then once you have drilled down that problem, and then you actually ask, okay, what is the optimal way to solve it? And surprisingly, many times it might not involve AI. And that's completely fine. Many times it might not even involve technology, and that's fine, right? It's really solving those problems. And if there's a case that there is tech involved, now the question is, can you use AI or not? Right? And now if the answer is yes, and then the next answer is, would you use something that's custom or would you use an off-the-shelf product? Again, this is why it's very important to start from the problem, not the solution, because not every problem needs a custom AI solution. That is not.
Yeah. Yeah. I want to dig a little bit deeper into that problem reframing, because I think it's something I've thought a lot about. I was an EIR at a incubator before starting this and another business, and a big part of our process was also like ensuring that you were solving the right problem by reframing the problem multiple times until you really kind of like landed on that like true problem that could be solved. Is there a process that you go through to kind of find that true problem? Like someone comes to you and says, hey, here's the problem we have. What do you do next?
You ask whys a lot. So like
Yeah.
ask
Yeah.
whys like at least like 5 times. You can draw out a process map. So why in this entire problem that you see, what's the input that's happening, the process, the output, and then on each of those process maps, you can ask more questions. But it comes down to really asking the right questions given the context of the talk we're having.
Yeah. Let's walk through the case study that we were discussing earlier. You worked on behalf of a eyewear client to help them improve and automate the prescription verification process. Tell me a little bit about that. I mean, I would love to start at the beginning. What problem did they come to you with, and where'd you go from there?
So they came to us to do an AI discovery workshop. We talked for about 2 hours, and we realized that there were a lot of places where they could use AI, but also save up time, right? And this was a case of classic founder-driven company where the founder is now stretched to their limit, and they just simply don't have more hours in a day to do the real high value work, right? And then, it was like a lot of marketing effort that was taking time, customer support that was taking time, and also prescription verification that was taking time. So that's how they came to us. And then we decided that, for the highest value to impact would definitely be on the prescription verification, because that's something where there isn't a tool off the shelf you can buy and implement. Whereas for, say, marketing, there's so many tools out there nowadays. You can experiment with that. And then, so we decided on that path to go after identifying like about 3 or 4 problems that could be solved using AI. We said this is the one that makes the perfect sense to build out a custom solution for it.
And prescription verification means, I guess, what does it mean? And then like, what's the process, the analog or before state process look like?
Yeah. So the client was a eyewear company, e-commerce eyewear company, and they also sell prescription sunglasses. Um, Now, not every prescription is eligible to get a sunglass because it doesn't the curvature of the sunglass, the way it's built, cannot handle all the prescription. And they had about 10 or 12 SKUs. And so each of them had a specific limit to what prescription ranges it could fit, right? So now the way it was working was a potential customer would come into the website, they would upload their prescription, and then they would select which glasses they were interested in. And then this would go to a contractor that they had hired who would look at those, the prescription that they had filled out, the glasses that they were interested in, and then looking at those glasses and seeing whether those glasses could handle that prescription or not, whether they were in the range or not. And then after that, the contractor would send out an email back to the customer, and the customer would get a link to now go and purchase the frames that they wanted.
How did you go about designing a solution to make it more efficient?
So when you're designing a solution, you gotta think about whether it's gonna be client facing or what we call crew facing. So is it an internal tool that you're using, or is it something that your customers would directly interact with? In this case, this was something that the client's customers would directly interact with, which means that there are less margin for error. You want very low latency, and you want it to be quite robust and scalable, right? So it doesn't quite come crashing down. And given that, we quickly realized that you needed a more robust infrastructure in place and a little bit more what we call edge case handling, error handling. So we automated that, taking the entire, almost most of the human out of the loop. So now what we designed was a system where the customer uploads their prescription. It now goes to our AWS servers, right? You're collecting the data, you're collecting their email, you're collecting the data, and there's an OCR happens that reads the prescription, validates it, make sure that's still in date, not expired. And then it looks at what the customer requested, which frame they wanted, and then given that frame and given this prescription, does it fit or not, right? There's different there's different nuances to it. So some frames, like there's spheres that they can handle. So it's something where it's a mix of AI, which is probabilistic, and actual algorithms, which is more deterministic. So once I've already done the OCR and you have to figure out what is it that they need, then you have to hand it over to a more deterministic software, an actual algorithm, if you will, that tells, okay, that gives out which lens or frames are eligible, and then hand it back to an agent, which then crafts the reply and gives it back. So that's a simple POC where you're again sending the email back, right? But now you're automating most of it. Now, the next MVP that we did was, once we knew that it worked, instead of sending an email back, change the page on their Shopify website to go to their desired shopping page. Again, that took the processing time from a couple of hours to a couple of days, which was a before state, to now it was literally a couple of seconds. You upload it, you click it. 97% of the cases, it would just take you to whatever it is that you needed. And also, what if you want, say, XYZ frame, but that's not eligible? There is an opportunity to upsell you, right? Maybe you're eligible for ABC frame. Maybe that's not what you wanted, but maybe that's the only frame that fits. So can you now prompt them towards that side and upsell them? So there's those ROIs as well. I would add one last thing, is that there's still a human in the loop process, right? And we're automating about 95% of them. And there's those 5% where, the OCR doesn't come out that well.
Right.
It's not in our confidence range that we can just ask the client to immediately, go and purchase it. That is where we're still putting humans in the loop to double check, to make the final decision, and giving 95% autonomy to the agent.
Cool. And so the before state was long manual process. The after state was, for the most part, fully automated process, sometimes a human in the loop, but a much faster process, and one that is less lossy, I guess, because you're waiting a couple days, someone may change their mind. You mentioned that this creates other opportunities to offer products to the customer. What were the end results of this to the e-commerce company?
Oh, they were great. They were great. So first was a almost complete reduction in contractor costs, right? What was about 10 hours of contractor per week was almost half an hour now. And this was something that the founders would have to sometimes do on the weekends because there was just an overwhelming number of requests that came in. So that was also eliminated. So the founders got their weekends back. And sometimes the contractors would be on leave. So like the founders had to pick up the slack. So that also got eliminated. And then, so that was about up to like about $40,000 in just savings, wages savings. And then, what we saw was a noticeable increase in conversion rates, right? Now, you're capturing some of those impulse purchases as well, because there's no need to wait for the verification. And so that increased conversion, um, I think it was something like $200,000 of increased, our estimated was that over the year, they'll have over $200,000 of increased sales from that increased convert due to a faster response time.
Yeah. So you both cut costs, which I guess was presumably the original hypothesis. You'd be able to do this more efficiently with less people, you'd save some money, but then in doing so, you also grew the company's revenue. So
Yeah.
And how long did it take to deploy this?
About 4 to 6 weeks. So it took about a week to design it, 2 to 3 weeks to set it up, and then rest of the time was doing testing and evals to make sure that it works.
Yeah. What other types of companies could something like this be relevant for? Understanding that prescription verification is specific to eyewear, but are there other types of businesses where something like this could be relevant?
Yes, right. First, one thing that you have to understand is this was a replicable process. So anything that is replicable, you can automate. That's my hypothesis. That's what I believe in. And there might be other companies that are e-commerce companies where they have something like that, where there has to be a human in the loop to approve something. Those are processes that you could automate. Maybe other professional services, I guess. Is something that comes to mind. There's probably a lot of PDF imports that they do, and they have to scan it. They have to manually copy data from one PDF to another, or one PDF to a sheet or somewhere. So those are places where you could use similar technologies.
What a great example. Many SMBs and startups aren't really adopting AI. For someone considering curious about using AI in their business today, what's like the most effective first step that they can take?
Well, I think we talked about this. It's basically being open to experimentation. That is, without doubt, the first step that everyone should take. Experiment, try to build custom workflows using custom GPTs, use a lot of chatbots. Be open to the idea that AI is going to augment most of the work. Don't fall into the hype that AI is going to replace people, but believe that it's going to augment your work. Give your team permission to experiment with ChatGPT, Claude, Gemini, your choice of chatbot. Ask them to build workflows. Ask them to build custom GPTs, and once the experiment is done, ask them to share it. Ask them to share it within the company, wherever they're within themselves, their colleagues. So see what sticks out, right? If there is something that's common across all of your employees or all of your teammates, that's something you could now take to the next step, which would be creating more custom application solutions around it. Also, avoid the extremes when you're doing this. So don't go for overly complex automation solutions that you'll see on LinkedIn, because those are often tailored to a very specific use case, and your use case will almost 100% not be that use case, and it's just not worth the effort to implement that.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Cool. As we look forward, what do you think will truly set apart those SMBs that successfully adopt AI from those that struggle?
That's a great question. A couple of things come to mind. First, it's going to be those who are willing to change and adapt, while not forgetting why they exist, right? Every company exists to solve a problem, but you can change and adapt the way you solve that problem. Those that pay special attention to design and aesthetics, especially in when there is just so much AI slop out there. Uh, those that pay special attention to their customers. So AI should enhance customer experience, not replace it. Again, human in the loop is important. You don't want all of your customer service going to AI, maybe like 80%, 50%. Um, the ones who implement AI solutions thoughtfully, not because simply because they can, but because it's something that they should, where the ROI makes sense and it's something that's actually good for their customers. And lastly, it would be companies that use AI to amplify their unique strengths rather than trying to be everything at once, be everything to everyone. They're doubling down on their specialty and using AI to amplify themselves.
Yeah. You mentioned professional services firms early on in our conversation about opportunities. What should professional services firms be doing today? And maybe the answer is what you just described, but what should they be doing today to ensure that they benefit from this technology and not, be disrupted by it? Because they obviously are a category of business that is human capital driven, and AI in many ways can do a lot of things faster and more consistently than humans can do. And so if you're running a professional services firm, a consulting firm, or an agency, what would you be doing today?
I'd be looking at my junior most consultants and looking at places where they're doing a lot of replicable work, manual work, grunt work, which could be now automated using AI or tools or agents. I'd be thinking about re-evaluating the pyramid structure. And maybe the future is where there's less junior consultants. It's more mid consultants heavy with those who have expertise in their field already compared to those out of colleges looking to build expertise in the consulting firm. And then the third part is, professional services is all about human connection, right? So professional services as a industry segment is not going away because humans trust humans, not robots. So, in this, I guess the next logical play is, can you now augment yourself using the right AI at the right level and then train your next generations of leaders to double down on the human side of connections and business?
I love it. Nitesh, thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you so much thanks for having me here.